Kale, the demon lord, sat upon his obsidian throne. His eyes, burning embers of ancient power, surveyed the desolate landscape. His realm, Abaddon, was a testament to his might. Jagged obsidian peaks clawed at the crimson sky. Rivers of molten lava snaked through the barren plains. Kale was power. He was fear. He was the undisputed ruler of this shadowed domain. His heart, however, was a hollow echo of his former self. Millennia of ruling with an iron fist had hardened him. He had become a being of darkness, feared by all. He was alone. Kale yearned for something more, something beyond the endless cycle of conquest and dominion. But what could penetrate the darkness that had consumed him? What could fill the void in the heart of a demon lord? Alara was a beacon in a world shrouded in gray. She lived in the human realm of Etheria, a world bathed in sunlight and vibrant with life. She was an artist, her soul as vibrant as the colors she wielded on her canvases. Her talent was a gift, a spark of pure creativity in a world slowly losing its wonder. Alara's heart ached for the stories whispered on the wind, stories of a world cloaked in shadow, a world ruled by a being of immense power. She longed to capture the unseen, to breathe life onto her canvases with colors that defied imagination. One day, a whisper reached her, a whisper of the demon lord Kale. It spoke of his solitude, his power, and the desolate beauty of his realm. Alara felt an inexplicable pull, a desire to paint the unpaintable, to capture the essence of this enigmatic being. Driven by an unseen force, Alara began work on a portrait of Kale. She had never seen him, but his image blazed in her mind's eye. She painted with a fervor she had never known, her brushstrokes echoing the whispers of the wind. Days turned into weeks. Alara poured her heart and soul into the portrait. Finally, as the last stroke of paint fell upon the canvas, the studio seemed to hold its breath. The portrait was alive. Kale stood in the portrait, not as a fearsome overlord, but as a being of shadowed elegance. His eyes, though filled with ancient power, held a flicker of something else. Longing, curiosity. Alara had captured not just his likeness, but a glimpse into the heart of a demon lord. The moment Kale laid eyes upon his portrait, he felt an unknown sensation ripple through him. Intrigue? Recognition? He couldn't be sure. He was drawn to the artist, this Alara, who had seen past the fear he instilled and glimpsed the being beneath. He found himself crossing the veil that separated their realms. Stepping into Alara's sunlit studio, he stood before her, the fearsome demon lord and the courageous artist, separated by a canvas that spoke volumes. Their first meeting was a clash of light and shadow. Alara, initially afraid, found herself captivated by the sorrow she saw in his eyes. Kale, used to trembling obedience, was disarmed by her courage and the compassion in her gaze. Section 5. The Unveiling. As they met in secret, sharing stolen moments in the space between their worlds, a bond began to form. Alara saw past the fearsome facade to the being beneath. Kale, in turn, was drawn to her light, her warmth, her unwavering belief in the goodness she saw in him. Alara became his confidant, his anchor to a world he had forgotten. He shared with her the burden of his past, the weight of his crown, the loneliness that gnawed at his soul. She listened without judgment, offering him solace and understanding. With Alara, Kale began to remember. He remembered a time before the throne, before the darkness had consumed him. He remembered the warmth of companionship, the joy of laughter, the simple beauty of existence. He remembered love. Section 6. Seeds of Doubt. The transformation in Kale did not go unnoticed. His lieutenants, creatures of shadow and flame, felt their lord's power shifting, softening. Murmurs of discontent began to echo through the obsidian halls of his fortress. His most trusted advisor, a creature of nightmares named Malkor, watched with growing unease. He had served Kale for millennia, his loyalty unquestioning. But this change in his master was unsettling. It reeked of weakness, of vulnerability. Malkor vowed to protect his master even from himself. Section 7. The Shadow Council. Malkor gathered the Shadow Council, the elite of Kale's army, creatures of immense power and unwavering cruelty. They met in the heart of the Obsidian Citadel, their shadows cast long and menacing by the flickering flames of the Nether Forge. "Our lord weakens!" Malcor boomed, his voice echoing with the rasp of 1,000 dying stars. He allows a human, a mere flicker of light, to sway him. This infatuation must end. The council chamber pulsed with dark energy. The lieutenants, their hearts filled with fear and resentment, agreed. This human, this Alara, was a threat to their order, their way of life. They would remove her, even if it meant challenging the Demon Lord himself. Kale sensed the growing unrest in his realm. He knew his lieutenants, felt their disapproval like a cold wind blowing through his soul. He was at a crossroads. Cling to the darkness that had defined him for millennia, or embrace the light that Alara had rekindled within him. He sought Alara out, his heart heavy with dread. He told her of the whispers in the shadows, the growing threat to their newfound happiness. He told her that he might have to choose, and the thought of losing her was a pain more profound than he could have imagined. Alara listened, her heart aching for him. She knew the risks, the danger they were in, but she also knew that love, true love, was worth fighting for. She wouldn't let him face this alone. "We face it together," she said, her voice strong despite the tremor in her chest. "Love isn't a weakness, Kale, it's your strength. Don't let them take that from you." The confrontation was inevitable. Malcor, leading the Shadow Council, challenged Kale's authority. The obsidian halls of the fortress shook with the unleashed might of their combined power. Kale, however, fought with a strength he had forgotten he possessed. Fueled by love, by the desire for a future with Alara, he fought not for dominance, but for freedom. Alara, standing by his side, was not a mere bystander. She channeled her own power, the raw force of creation itself, weaving protective barriers around Kale, deflecting attacks, her courage a beacon in the heart of the storm. In that moment of truth, as the fate of both realms hung in the balance, Kale made a choice. He unleashed the full force of his power, not in an explosion of destructive rage, but in a wave of pure transformative energy. The darkness that had clung to him for millennia shattered, replaced by a blinding radiant light. The Shadow Council, unprepared for this shift in power, faltered. Their attacks, fueled by darkness, were consumed by the overwhelming light. One by one they fell, their forms dissolving into motes of shadow and dust. Only Malcor remained, his eyes wide with disbelief and betrayal. "You choose her?" he roared, his voice cracking with the effort of facing his master's power. "You betray us for love?" Kale, his voice filled with a power that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring, replied, "No, Malcor, I choose myself." With a final surge of light, he stripped Malcor of his power, banishing him to the darkest recesses of Abaddon. The battle was over. Light had triumphed, not through brute force, but through the unwavering power of love. The transformation was complete. Abaddon, once a desolate wasteland, began to heal. The crimson sky softened to a gentle blue, shot through with streaks of gold and crimson. Flowers, their petals like stained glass, bloomed in the newly fertile ground. The rivers, once filled with lava, now flowed with clear, sparkling water. Kale, no longer a being of fear and shadow, stood tall, bathed in the warmth of the new dawn. He looked upon his realm, his heart filled with a peace he had not known for millennia. He was no longer the Demon Lord. He was Kale, a being of both light and darkness, capable of love, compassion, and forgiveness. Alara, her hand clasped in his, smiled. Her love, her unwavering belief in him had broken the chains of his past and set him free. Together, they would rule Abaddon, not with an iron fist, but with understanding and compassion. The tale of Kale and Alara became legend, whispered on the winds of both realms. It was a testament to the power of love, a beacon of hope in a world often consumed by darkness. Their love had not erased the darkness, but had shown that light could exist even in the deepest shadows. The barrier between Abaddon and Etheria, once impenetrable, thinned. Trade and diplomacy flourished. Creatures of shadow and light, once sworn enemies, now walked side by side. The world, once divided, began to heal. The Demon Lord's heart, once a cold and empty void, now beat with the warm, steady rhythm of love, a love that had the power to change everything.